Good day everyone, I am Josanti Cabañas and I am the reporter of Brain Development. Today, I'll be discussing to you about brain development, its processes, and its stage. I hope you will stay with me at the end of this video. So let's begin. Brain development and its processes. So the brain development begins in the 3rd to 4th week after pregnancy. By the end of the 2nd trimester or the 6 months of the child has more than 100 billion of brain cells, nerve cells, or the neurons. After birth, these neurons forms connections to outside stimulation and learning occurs through these connections. Much of the brain's growth and development occurs during the first few years after birth. By age 3, a baby's brain or a brain is approximately 90% of its adult size. Therefore, early stimulation and interaction with the world are critical to determining the person we become. In brain development, acquiring specific kind of skills and information starts at an early stage of life. Learning occurs through a combination of things which are the following: genetics, interaction with and response from others, and last but not the least would be the environmental stimulation. So let's discuss first about genetics. The human brain development is created through continuing complex interactions of genetic and environmental influences. The challenge of linking specific genetic or environmental risk factors to typical or atypical behaviors has led to interest in using brain structural features as an immediate phenotype. The next would be interaction with and response from the others. Relationships are critical for development from birth through childhood and adolescence. The last and the third one would be environmental stimulation. In an optimal environment, a brain will develop the neurons and synapses associated with cognitive function, self-confidence, and self-control. While early brain development is influenced by a genetic blueprint, environmental stimuli can affect the way that genes are being expressed or expressed in some ways. The disadvantages of critical learning periods. Many of my discussion would only provide about the advantage and the first basis knowledge of brain development. While in this part, I would like to discuss to you one of the biggest disadvantage of the learning periods, and that would be overstimulation. So overstimulation. You see, overstimulation, it leaded to excessive concern, resulting in some cases and pushing young children too hard into learning situations. Furthermore, this is very harmful and it leads to burnout and emotional stress of a young age. While on the other hand, as a coping mechanism, the brain continues to develop throughout life to adapt to experience the negativity and the negative complex of our surroundings. So here are the things that children need in the first 3 years to achieve their highest potential. Number 1. Good maternal health during the prenatal period. A child cannot be healthy or happy with the absence of a healthy and a happy mother. Prenatal and postpartum maternal health is critical to a mother's physical and mental well-being, and this contributes to her ability to render loving, proper care to her newborn baby or child at birth and years thereafter. The next one would be a feeling of safety. When a child feels safe, that child is able to take the risk necessary to be in relationships, to explore, and to try new things. Simply put, feeling safe makes learning possible. Research has shown that children who feel insecure play and explore less and have more difficulty with peer relationships. Belief that their needs will be met. An assurance that their ideas and belief will be met. Throughout a child's journey in his or her life, they have some belief that should be met, and they should also be a focus by the parents for a successful years in his or her life. A feeling of importance to others. The ability to put yourself in someone's shoes and understand what they are going through. It's the ability to feel what they are feeling. A balance of freedom and limits. Offering freedom within limits provides a comfortable balance between an overly structured environment and a chaotic one. What does freedom within limits mean? It means setting clear expectations and ground rules ahead of time and following through. It means making and sticking to flexible routines. It means a secure, loving, and trusting relationship between child and adult. It also means providing age-appropriate choices and opportunities for self-mastery and independence. The last on the list would be exposure to appropriate and diverse experiences. Learning about diversity is important because children need to learn to respect all people and understand that everyone is alike but also different. Teaching children to respect differences is also a beginning in the prevention of aggressive and violent behavior. The 3 stages of brain development. There are stages of brain development. These stages are important and significant for a child to have a normal life growing up. These not only describe but also give deep knowledge towards the stages of brain and how it functions. There are 3 main stages of brain development of a child, and these are the early childhood development, middle childhood development, and last but not the least would be adolescence development. Early childhood development. This is the first stage of brain development. Accordingly, early childhood is when the brain continues to develop after birth. Scientifically, the brain doubles the weight after 6 months in this stage. The brain development proceeds at an uneven pace, occurring between 3 and 10 months and between 15 to 24 months. It was said and proven that there can be 100 billion of neurons or brain cells present at birth which conduct nerve impulses. After, the neurons are said to be nourished by the advent of glial cells present in the child's brain. The glial cells or the neuroglial cells. The glial cells are responsible for the increase of brain size. The glial cells outnumber the neurons or brain cells with a proportion of 10 out of 1, but the glial cells are smaller than brain cells or neurons, making up to a half of the brain tissue. Neuroglial cells or glial cells provide supporting function to the nervous system. Early research viewed glial cells as the glue of the nervous system. Glial cells are smaller than neurons but are greater in number than nerve cells in the brain. Glial cells do not have axon and dendrites. Another important function of the glial cells is the production of myelin. Myelin and myelination. Myelin is a fatty substance that forms the covering of the axon of the neuron. Myelin is an insulating layer or sheath that forms around nerves, including those in the brain and in the spinal cord. It is made up of protein and fatty substances. This myelin sheath allows electrical impulses to transmit quickly and efficiently along the nerve cells. If myelin is damaged, these impulses slow down. Myelination of nerve fibers grows at different paces for different parts of the brain. Axon of the neuron or the so-called nerve fiber. Axon, also called the nerve fiber, is a portion of a nerve cell or neuron that carries nerve impulses away from the cell body. A neuron typically has one axon that connects it with the other neurons or with a muscle or with a gland. Some axons may be quite long, reaching, for example, from the spinal cord down to a toe. Axon of the neuron or the nerve fiber, they are also responsible for transmitting neural messages. The process of myelination. The first to be myelinated in a child's brain is the peripheral nervous system connecting the sensory perception, brain muscles, spinal cord, and the internal organs and glands. The myelination of these organs enables the newborn baby to process information like receiving and acting on it from various sensory systems. However, the fibers in the optic tract, responsible for vision, are exempted at birth. These are the least mature. The second process for myelination is that there is no increase of growth in neurons or brain cells after following birth. The number of neurons is constant, meaning it won't be added through the years, but it continues to develop with age. The best example for this statement is the length B of axons that continually increases through the years. Hence, there were no added neurons. The length of the axons and the tiny branch-like fibers or dendrites at the end of axons increases in density over the first 2 years of life. The third process of myelination is that the sensory and the motor areas are the primary sites of brain growth associated in noted improvements in fine motor skills and eye-hand cooperation. Fine motor skills or the movements. Fine motor skill is the coordination of small muscles in movements, usually involving the synchronization of hands and fingers together with the eyes. The eye-hand coordination is the coordinated control of eye movement with hand movement, and the processing of visual input to guide reaching and grasping along with the use of proprioception of the hands to guide the eyes. Such improvements occur at the ages between 6 to 8. It is in the second part of brain improvement shifts to frontal lobes of the cerebral cortex. The next process would be myelination continues through middle childhood. In particular, the reticular formation and the nerves linking the reticular formation to the frontal lobes, in which there is a big significance or importance of reticular formation because it controls the attention. Furthermore, it is documented that the ability to control attention increases significantly during middle childhood. The last process, but not the least, of the 5 processes of myelination is the emergence of selective attention caused by continuous myelination. It is the reason that children aged 6 to 12 can have selective attention. So what is selective attention? Selective attention allows children to focus cognitive ability on the elements of a problem or solution. The best example for this situation is when a teacher changes the form and colors of the work activities, but due to selective attention, the students would most likely focus on the work activities and not with the changes made. Furthermore, full myelination of the reticular formation and the frontal lobes enables the children between 6 to 12 to function more like adults, still with the presence of selective attention. The next stage of child brain development would be the middle childhood. In this stage, 95% of brain growth is reached by the time a child reaches middle childhood. Such growth is characterized by interrelated processes such as the self-proliferation and the self-pruning. The growth and interrelated processes is composed of 2 subordinates, which are the cell proliferation, which takes place during the first several years of life. Furthermore, it consists of the overproduction of neurons and interconnections. On the other hand, self-pruning is the continuous process of the childhood phase. Furthermore, it involves in selective elimination of excess cells and the cutting back of connections. The 2 processes afford the tuning of neutral development through experience, such that frequent interconnections are retained while the infrequent are pruned or reduced. This also results to some big changes in the brain metabolism, due to the demands of the growth are myelinated in some degree. 2 changes in brain metabolism. The first in the list is the following. In the middle childhood, the neurons of the association areas are myelinated to some degree. That is, the parts of the brain where sensory, motor, and intellectual functions are linked together. Second changes in the brain metabolism is that in the middle childhood, the ability to identify and act a relationship between objects in space are heightened. This results from the lateralization of spatial perception occurring in the right cerebral hemisphere. The example for this is imagining or picturing a person, head down, or imagining a whole classroom. Just like the others, there is a big difference between the lateralization of spatial perception and lateral perception. The spatial perception is defined as the ability to perceive spatial relationships in respect to the orientation of one's body despite distracting information. It consists of being able to perceive and visually understand outside spatial information such as features, properties, measurement, shapes, position, and motion. Lateral perception on the other side is perception of faces and objects at the age of 6. And complex lateral perception is not strongly lateralized not until the age of 8. It was said that a test for lateralization of spatial perception involves relative right or left hand orientation or the ability to identify what is left or what is right. All in all, it was determined by a test through the behavior of a child. And lateral spatial perception is determined through its increased efficiency. That is, the increased efficiency by which older children learn math concepts and problem strategies. The last of the 3 stages would be adolescence development. In the teenage years, there are 2 major brain growth spurts. One occurring between ages 13 to 15, and the second brain growth spurt beginning at the age of 17 and which continues to early adulthood. The 2 major brain growth spurts. The first part is at the age of 13 to 15. In this spurt, the cerebral cortex becomes thicker and neuronal pathways become more efficient. This results to more energy being produced and consumed by the brain than in the years following. Additionally, in this part is when qualitatively different neural network emerges. This enables teens to think abstractly and to reflect on their own cognitive processes. Some major changes in brain organization occurring between ages 13 to 15 also emerges. Thus, qualitative shifts, however, in cognitive functioning appear after the age of 15. And the last for my discussion would be the second part of brain development in adolescence. So what is the second part? And it's knowledge. The second part ranges at the age 17 to adulthood. It has the focus of development in front lobes of cerebral cortex. This results to more easier process of dealing problems that requires cognitive function in contrast with the other stages which would be early childhood and the middle childhood. So it's a wrap. That would be the end of my discussion which talks about brain development. So in summary, there are 3 stages of early child brain development. That would be the early childhood development, middle childhood development, and the adolescence development. So I hope you have learned something from my video or from my discussion, and I hope to hear your thoughts soon. So I am Jason Tico Banyas, signing off as your reporter for this subject. Char. So, kapun ka, thank you, ciao, and bye-bye.